I think there are moments in life, quiet, unsuspecting moments, when a single sentence can break you more deeply than a lifetime of suffering ever could. For me, that moment came on a warm afternoon, with sunlight sliding through my living room window, touching the floor like nothing in the world was wrong, and then I heard her voice. Soft, casual, almost careless. "We got married yesterday." That's all she said, in my breath. It just stopped. My daughter-in-law, a woman I had only spoken to twice before, sat across from me on my own sofa. Legs crossed, her perfect little smile carved onto her face as if she were telling me the weather. As if she weren't holding a knife behind her teeth. I had simply asked, "Beta, when is the wedding?" That was all, and she gave me an answer that didn't just shatter my expectations. It shattered something in me that I didn't even know was fragile. Before I continue, if this story finds you in a moment of loneliness, heartbreak, or quiet strength, please take a second to like the video, subscribe, and stay until the end. I promise you, what happened next is something I will never forget. And maybe you won't either, because some stories don't whisper. They echo, and this one still echoes inside me. I remember looking at her. This woman my son had chosen over the world, over our family, over the mother who spent half her life holding him together, and all I could think was, yesterday. You married him yesterday. Without us? Without me? My ears rang. My hands felt cold. And for a moment, I wasn't sitting in my living room. I was back in that dimly lit hospital room 27 years ago, holding my son for the first time, promising him with my heart and soul that he would never be alone, that I would never miss a single milestone. Not a step, not a word, not a birthday, not a heartbreak, not a moment of his life. And now, here I was, learning about the most important day of his entire adulthood. From a stranger, not from him. Not from the boy I raised. Not from the child who used to grip my fingers and say, "Mama, don't let go." It was her, his wife, who didn't look even slightly uncomfortable as she said it. "We got married yesterday." I remember blinking, slowly, as if blinking would rewind the moment. As if blinking would make her laugh and say, "I'm joking, Mama. Of course we didn't marry without you." But she didn't laugh. She simply adjusted her dupatta and checked her phone, bored, occupied, untouched by my silence. My silence, though, it was not empty. It was full of confusion, of betrayal, of every memory I had of my son growing up, now twisted. Now stained with something I didn't yet understand. My voice finally returned, shaky and thin. "Why?" That's all I asked her. Why? Why wouldn't he tell me? Why wouldn't she tell me? Why would they cut me out of something so sacred, so emotional, so once in a lifetime? She tilted her head slightly, looked at me the way someone looks at something fragile, breakable, inconvenient. And then she said words that would stay with me for months. "Auntie, we didn't think you'd take it well. I didn't think I'd take it well. I didn't think I'd take it well." The marriage of my only child. The son I raised alone for 17 years. The boy whose entire world used to revolve around me. I felt something tighten inside my chest. A knot made of hurt and disbelief. I swallowed. My son didn't think I would take it well. She shrugged. He didn't want drama. Double quotes, drama. For a moment, I thought maybe I misheard her. Drama? Was I drama? The room began to feel smaller, as if the walls were moving inward. The sunlight that had felt warm a minute ago suddenly felt harsh, exposing, merciless. I didn't speak again. I couldn't, because behind her words, behind her careless tone, I heard the echo of something deeper. My son didn't think I deserved to be there. He didn't think I needed to know. He didn't think my presence mattered. And the worst part, the absolute worst part, he didn't come home to tell me himself. He just sent her, as if I were an obligation, as if the news of his marriage was something to be delivered like a parcel. The front door opened a few minutes later. He walked in smiling, that same smile he had since childhood, but when his eyes met mine, the smile faltered for a small second. But I caught it. A son always forgets his mother taught him how to read eyes. But a mother never forgets how my daughter-in-law stood up and walked to him, looping her arm through his with an ease that told me she already owned him. She already replaced me. My voice cracked when I finally said it. Beta, you got married. He didn't rush to me. He didn't hug me. He didn't show excitement or guilt or pride. He just nodded. Double quotes. Yes, Ma. Yesterday, a simple sentence. A simple tone. But it carried a weight that crushed everything inside me. I felt my heartbeat echo in my ears. My hands trembled. I wanted to say, how could you? I wanted to say, I deserve to be there. I wanted to say, after everything I've done for you, how could you do this to me? But I said none of it, because for the first time in my life, I realized something painful. I no longer knew my son. The little boy who used to run to the gate to welcome me after work. The teenager who stayed up at night crying on my shoulder after his first heartbreak. The man who once said, Ma, no one will ever come before you. That boy, that man. He was gone. Standing in front of me was a stranger. A stranger who married without me. A stranger who didn't think I would take it well. A stranger who chose someone else to share his joy with. My throat ached. Burning with words I couldn't speak. So I simply whispered, Mubarak ho, congratulations. He nodded again, awkward, distant, as if something inside him was fighting to look at me, but he forced himself not to. I don't know if it was guilt, or indifference, or maybe love buried under months of manipulation, but his eyes didn't shine the way a married man's eyes should shine. He wasn't happy, not really. And that small detail, that tiny crack, was the first sign, the first clue, the first whisper that something was wrong, something much deeper, something I would only discover later, something that would break me, and rebuild me, and teach me a kind of quiet strength I didn't know I had. But that day, the day my son told me he was married without me, I learned the kind of pain that doesn't scream. It settles. It sinks, it becomes a part of your bones. That evening, after they left, I sat alone in the darkness of my living room, feeling like the world had shifted beneath my feet, and I had nowhere to stand anymore. But this wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning, because the silence that came after that day, the neglect, the humiliation, the things his wife would say behind closed doors, and the decisions my son would make, all of it would lead me to a moment where I finally had to choose something I never thought I'd choose. My dignity, or my son, and when that moment came, I surprised even myself. I don't remember driving home that day. I remember gripping the steering wheel so tightly my fingers turned white. I remember the sound of my heartbeat pounding in my ears. And I remember whispering to myself over and over, no, this can't be real. Not my son. He wouldn't do this to me, but he did. And the truth hit me with a quiet cruelty that felt colder than betrayal itself. My son didn't forget me. He excluded me. And that kind of abandonment, it doesn't shout. It whispers. It settles into your bones. I reached home, closed the door behind me, and leaned against it like I was trying to keep the whole world out. I didn't cry. I just stood there. Empty, silent, exhausted. I walked to my bedroom, sat on the edge of my bed, and stared at the floor for so long the sunlight changed colors across the walls. Every minute felt heavier than the last. I kept thinking about his little hands. How he used to wrap his fingers around mine and say, Mama, promise you'll always stay with me. The irony burned. He left first. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't close my eyes even once. I just lay there, replaying his words, her words, their faces, trying to understand how I became a stranger in my own child's life. But pain has a strange way of sharpening the truth. By sunrise, something inside me had shifted. A quiet strength, a decision. I wasn't going to beg for a place in their life. Not anymore. For years, I lived for him. For his future. For his happiness. I forgot that I had a life too. That morning, I made myself breakfast for the first time in months, just for myself. I brewed tea without thinking about anyone else's preference. I sat in silence and actually tasted the tea. It was bitter, but it was mine still. The ache of being left out of the wedding stayed with me like a bruise that never fully healed. The questions wouldn't stop. Why didn't he tell me? What did I do wrong? Was I too protective? Too emotional? Too present? Not present enough? But no matter how much I searched, the answers didn't come. 3 days later, he finally called. When I saw his name on the screen, my heart stopped. Not out of excitement, but fear. I picked up. My voice sounded foreign. He said, "Mom, I'm sorry I didn't tell you. It all happened so fast. But the thing about apologies is, you can hear when they're real. And you can hear when they're meant to cover guilt, not heal wounds." His voice didn't tremble. Mine did. I didn't ask him why. I didn't ask him how. I didn't even ask him if they were happy. I simply said, "Congratulations." There was a long silence. Maybe he expected anger. Maybe tears. Maybe a lecture. But I had nothing left to give him. After a moment, he said, "We want you to meet her parents this weekend. They're having a dinner. We want you." The word sounded like an invitation, but felt more like an obligation. Still, I agreed. Because I was his mother, and because I needed to see their world. The world he chose over me. With my own eyes. I dressed simply that evening. A soft beige shawl. Minimal jewelry. A calm face masking a storm I refused to show when I arrived. The house was grand, too grand for a newly married couple. It smelled of expensive candles and polished floors. Her parents welcomed me politely, warmly even, but there was something performative about it. I noticed it immediately. The way they spoke to each other in half smiles. The way they praised their daughter as if rehearsed. The way my son pretended he wasn't nervous, his knee bouncing under the table. Then I noticed something else. Their daughter wouldn't meet my eyes. She smiled, yes. She made conversation. She served food. But her eyes kept drifting away from me, as if afraid to settle too long. As if she knew exactly what they had done. Halfway through dinner, her mother said, "You know, it was her idea to have a small private ceremony. She wanted it simple, intimate." My son stiffened. Her eyes lowered. My fork froze mid-air. Simple, intimate, or secret? My chest tightened, not from anger, but from clarity, and sometimes clarity is cruel, because the truth becomes too obvious to ignore. They didn't just forget to tell me, they didn't want to tell me. My son married a woman who didn't want me there, and he agreed. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur of polite words and forced smiles. I heard conversations around me, but nothing entered my heart. I realized something painful that night. I was no longer part of his new life. I was just someone he used to love. When I returned home, I sat at my dining table. The same place where I had celebrated every one of his birthdays, his first job, his promotions. The place where I once imagined his wedding dinner would be celebrated with family, laughter, and warmth. But reality was different. Reality was a quiet kitchen, a single plate, a cold cup of tea. That was the night I finally allowed myself to cry. Not because he got married, but because that little boy with the bright eyes and sticky hands, the one who used to run to the door just to hug me when I came home, was gone, and the man he became didn't need me anymore. But grief is not a place you stay. It's a place you pass through. And somewhere between those tears, a strange, unexpected strength began to grow inside me. A whisper, a promise, a reminder you still have a life. You still matter. You are still a woman beyond being a mother. I didn't know it then. But this was the beginning of my transformation, the beginning of reclaiming myself. One quiet decision at a time. The days after that dinner were strangely quiet, not empty, not painful, Just quiet in a way that felt unfamiliar. For the first time in years, my life wasn't revolving around my son's needs, his choices, his happiness. For the first time, the mirror reflected someone I barely recognized, a woman who had spent so long being needed that she forgot how to exist on her own. But something inside me had shifted. It wasn't anger. It wasn't bitterness. It was a soft awakening. I began doing small things for myself. In the mornings, I walked in the park near my house. Not to meet anyone, not to impress anyone, just to breathe. I started reading again. The novels I used to love before motherhood consumed every hour of my life. I rearranged my living room, painted the guest room, put new curtains in the kitchen, things I'd postponed for years because I was always waiting. Waiting for a family gathering, waiting for my son to visit, waiting for life to feel full again. But fullness, I realized, doesn't come from others. It comes from yourself. One evening, a week later, my son called again. I stared at the phone ringing, not with dread, not with excitement. With calm. I picked up. His voice sounded different, hesitant, softer than before. Mom, are you busy? I smiled to myself. A strange, quiet smile. No, I said. I'm just reading. A pause. A long one. Reading? You haven't done that in years. I know, I replied, turning a page. I'm rediscovering things I love. He didn't know how to respond. Maybe he never imagined a version of me that existed beyond serving, giving, waiting. Maybe he never knew me at all. After a moment, he said, we wanted to invite you for dinner this Friday. Just us. A week ago, those words would have healed something in me. Now. They didn't, but they didn't hurt either. I agreed, not out of desperation, but out of clarity. I wanted to see him, but I also wanted him to see me, the woman he left out, the woman who survived heartbreak and kept walking. Friday came. I dressed simply again. A soft blue shawl, light makeup, a calm heart. When I arrived at their apartment, something felt different the moment the door opened. My son wasn't standing tall, confident, proud. He looked nervous. And she, my daughter-in-law, looked like a woman carrying a secret she didn't know how to confess. We sat down in the living room. Awkward smiles, small talk, the kind of politeness that hides the real conversation beneath it. Finally, she spoke. Auntie, I want to apologize. Her voice trembled. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. About the wedding. She continued. It was my idea. I wanted a small ceremony because I was afraid of me. I asked, but my tone wasn't sharp. It was tired, understanding. She nodded slowly. I thought you wouldn't like me. I thought I wasn't good enough. And I didn't want to start off being judged. Judgment. The quiet poison that ruins relationships before they begin. My son looked down at his hands. Guilt written all over him. I should have fought for you to be there, he whispered. I should have told you. I was wrong. For a moment, I felt the old ache rise again. That sting of being forgotten, displaced, replaced. But then, just as quickly, it softened. Because I realized something quietly profound. Their choices were about them. Their fears. Their insecurities. Their immaturity. Not my worth. Not my motherhood. Not my love. I took a slow breath. I was hurt. I said honestly, deeply, but I'm not here to punish anyone. My daughter-in-law's eyes filled with tears. I want to earn your respect, she whispered. I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman who now held the heart of the boy I raised. She wasn't malicious. She was simply young, afraid, and learning, just like I once did. So I said the only thing my heart told me to say. Respect isn't given instantly. It grows. And I'm willing to let it grow. Her tears spilled. My son reached for my hand, hesitant, almost childlike, and when his fingers touched mine, a wave of memories flooded back. His first steps, his first fever, his first heartbreak, his first day of university. And the day he walked out of my life without knowing he had broken something inside me. But in that moment, I didn't feel broken. I felt whole, because I had learned something in the silence of my loneliness. Even when they forget you, even when they leave you behind, even when they choose a life that doesn't include you, you still remain, you still stand, you still breathe. And sometimes the greatest revenge is not anger, not distance, not punishment. It is peace, the quiet kind, the grounded kind. The kind that comes from knowing who you are and who you refuse to stop being. We had dinner together that night. Not as a perfect family, not as a healed family, but as a beginning. My son walked me to the door afterwards. He hugged me tightly, longer than usual, and in a trembling voice, he whispered, "I'm scared of losing you." For the first time in months, my heart softened all the way through. "You already lost parts of me," I said gently, "but you didn't lose all of me." He closed his eyes, painfully aware of what those words meant, of how emotional distance grows like a plant no one waters. But as he pulled back, I saw something new in his eyes: regret, love, and a desire to do better. Sometimes that's all you can ask from someone you raised with your whole heart. As I drove home that night, the city lights blurred into soft streaks around me. The radio hummed quietly. The air felt still. I wasn't the same woman who once begged life to give her back the son she lost. I had changed. I had grown. And in that growth, I found something I thought I would never feel again. Peace. Real peace. The kind that settles in your chest and tells you you're finally home, not in someone else's life, not in someone else's choices, but in your own. And that, I realized, was the ending I deserved. Not a perfect family, not a flawless apology, not a dramatic reconciliation. Just peace, a quiet ending, a gentle ending. The kind of ending that lets you breathe again, the kind of ending that feels like strength, the kind of ending that feels like freedom.